Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. So here we are again, really, all of us together, all of us either wanting to feel that true love or feeling it. I mean, hopefully that is our experience as we watch a Bridging Heaven and Earth show. And for us here, the opportunity is again to just go one step deeper, one step more, one revolution into the wholeness. That somehow we know that there is that wholeness. Somehow we know that there is an all-encompassing love, an unconditional love. And we use words to describe that, but we know there's an experience so full and so vast and so peaceful and so powerful and so extraordinary, literally all at the same time, that it fries the circuits of this human consciousness. It fries the circuits of our daily lives. And throughout history, there have been teachers and masters and mistresses and groups that are dedicated to sharing that experience. They've had that experience. They know that experience. And that experience is the experience of the love, the one love, God as human beings call it. And again, we come together. You and I and all the people here in the audience and the crew and all the people who see this show on the internet, through DVDs, through cable, are coming together to feel love and share it, to sing the praises of the magic and wonder of this life, and to try, if they are not fully in that experience, to bring themselves and ourselves more fully into that experience, so that we live in the wonder and magic of this life. We know something is magical and wonderful about a consciousness looking at ourselves, as it were, in the mirror. And that consciousness having ideas and concepts about what that face looks like, of looking out, what's looking out, and seeing this incredible planet with all the things on it, and all the people interacting in the ways they do, and all the ways we interact that hurt each other and hurt ourselves. And we know that there's something not right, there's something disharmonious, there's something, in a sense, wrong with us not experiencing the wonder and magic, the miracle of being in a human body and being here together on this glorious planet. This planet, what is reasonable about us hurtling through space on a ball, on this magical ball in vast space? Why is it that astronauts, when they are a little bit off the Earth in terms of the vastness of the solar systems and the galaxies, look back at Earth and say, how can we do what we do? How can we be opposed to each other? How can we believe so much in these little lines called countries? How can we find things that separate us from the oneness of this Earth, from the oneness of this life, from the oneness of love? And I mean, the fact that we separate out, that's another miracle. I mean, the whole thing is such a giant miracle and so wondrous. And the potential is to experience such a love and such a joy and such a peace and such a power. And we have that opportunity. For human beings, when I am speaking these words in Earth time, the opportunity has never been greater, literally in thousands of years, for us to experience the wonder and magic of being in a human body. So, it would be good if we could take that opportunity and, it's in a way, settle into it, in a way, pray for it, in a way, recommit to it, in a way, dedicate yourself to that we need to dedicate as a group to that, to come together, all these points of light coming together to create this extraordinary beam of love, this beam of light. And our guests tonight are people whose lives, again, dedicated to that, to creating a beam of light, a beam of love that'll just awaken the realization of the truth being the one love, the one heart, God, that we all are, that we're never separate from, that we're incapable of being separate from. I mean, Keith and Francesca Richardson have one of the most extraordinary stores that I've seen on the planet, and I've traveled somewhat. I mean, it's just energetically, it's called the Angel Store. It's in California. And it vibrates love. It vibrates healing. And they've lived these incredible lives, and lately they've been involved in magical and wondrous things, beyond reason in a way, but not beyond love, not beyond God. I mean, Keith is an internationally acclaimed author. He's written several books, some about Andy Lakey, and you'll see some video about Andy. You'll see some art by Andy. He's an ordained minister of the Church of Religious Science, and he's the author of an extraordinary new book, The Secret of the Butterfly Lovers. And Francesca, who runs the store with Keith, is also an ordained minister of the Church of Religious Science, and is a huge part in this new extraordinary book. And they're both here to tell you the story of their magic and wonder, how they've come to the place where love is the question and love is the answer. So we're going to have Keith and Francesca with us, and also we have two beautiful videos by Andy Lakey, who's very much associated with Keith and Francesca. And also, as most of you know, we're in the middle of this extraordinary international art project where we got this vision about, I guess about a year ago, Earth Time. And we've had art exhibits, but the basis of it was a vision to call out to the world and say, anybody who wants to create a new original piece, artists, humans, any age, and we've gotten all ages, all countries, all sizes, pretty much. Any format based on the theme Bridging Heaven and Earth. And we'll put it on the shows, as you'll see tonight. We have art project shows, we have art exhibits. We're doing this extraordinary virtual gallery to make this energy enliven the planet, to heal the planet, to acupuncture the planet with all these extraordinary people. However they create, whether it's through dreams or visions or dedication or painting or sculpture, for them vibrating, that creativity of Bridging Heaven and Earth is just part of the healing process for this planet. So we'll see two of Andy's pieces that he did specifically for the art project. So, really it's an opportunity. It's going to be a beautiful show. Join me in a short meditation, then we'll have Andy's piece, and then Keith and Francesca will be with us. So please join me in a short meditation. Thank you. So we'll start tonight's show with the video, Silhouettes and Shadows. It's the first half of the video. Extraordinary thing about creativity, about art, about love. Andy Lakey, Silhouettes and Shadows. Enjoy.
Out of the blue, as a clear sky reflects vast oceans, secrets unravel in silhouettes and shadows. From profile to paper, improbable portraits emerge. On spectral horizons, lifelines dance with intricate energy and sublime purpose. Emanations from a vibrant soul with a heartbeat to the headwinds. Mere paint gives way to revelations to be touched, felt, and remembered. The human spirit ascends from the chaos as sparks reel and the senses fly. Lost resemblance is rediscovered in suggestive shroud. An avatar with man-made wings manifesting splendor. A vision unlike any your eyes have ever seen, yet unmistakably remembered as you yourself once remember it. Recognition fires our collective imagination. With primal renditions so powerful, they require dilution and deflection. Yet likeness has never challenged us like this before. These strangers, beautiful in their starkness and their innocence, unexpected visitors enter my subconscious. They're introduced to me by the people I portray. This is why I paint from places so distant and so close. Somewhere before.
Hi everybody, welcome back. So that's a pretty powerful video, isn't it? And the picture you're seeing in between us is Little Dino with Fruit Bowl. It's one of Andy Lakey's whimsical, playful, joyous little pieces he's done. As you know, thousands of angels and all kinds of other pieces. But this one he did specifically for the art project. So welcome, Keith and Francesca. So great to have you.
Thank you for having us here.
So why don't you guys talk a little bit about this last period in your life that's been so spectacular and ended up with this extraordinary butterfly book, and how you found so many things out about yourselves in this life and past lives. How did that get started for you?
Well, we really didn't mean it to happen. At least I didn't think I meant it to happen. What happened is I bought a book on tape called Understanding Your Angels and Meeting Your Guides by John Edward. And we were going to listen to it while we were driving to a gift show in Los Angeles in the year 2001. And as soon as I put it into the tape player in my car, the first thing that it said is, don't listen to this in your car, it's a guided meditation. And so I was kind of upset. I pulled the tape out and threw it on the floor. And it sat there for about a month. But after a month, I thought, I spent $20 on that tape. I'm going to listen to it. And I said to Francesca, let's do the meditation. So we went on our day off, got home, unhooked the phones, and sat down to do the meditation. And the first thing got into all this meditation stuff, and I wasn't that much into it. Francesca had never done a meditation. And it had me meet my spirit animal, which I thought was really stupid. And I did see my dog that had died a couple of years before, and it came to me and led me around. I was glad my dog looked okay, and took me to this cabin where I'm supposed to meet my spirit guide. Now I got to thinking, everybody's got a really cool spirit guide. Some people have like Merlin, some people have like shaman. I thought, well, I wonder what kind of spirit guide I have. So I knocked at the door, like John Edward told me to do, and the door opened slowly, and who's standing there? This tall, thin Asian guy with a long, thin mustache, a goatee, a ponytail, and a funny red and blue hat, and he's wearing a kimono, and he bows to me. And I said, oh, God, I must be eating too much Chinese food or something. Everybody's got a really cool spirit guide. I have like Fu Manchu. I can't believe it. So I said, so what's your name? And he said, Chung. I said, Chung King, I can't believe it. I'm eating too much Chinese food. That's what this is all about. And then I asked him what my life mission was, and he reached into his kimono and pulled out a copy of a book that I wrote called Andy Lakey's Psychomantium.
That you had already written in Earth Time.
Yes, it was a book
it was published and it was out.
It had been out about 5 years. And I said, I'm on an ego trip, I'm seeing my book. So I didn't think that much of it, but I did make one big mistake. I told Francesca about it.
And I had a lot of fun to tell everyone who came in the store that he have seen his spirit guide because he didn't believe it. But I have seen angels, and I made a lot of my relatives in my dreams. So I believed more than he did, and I was having so much fun because it was the beginning of his spirituality, and he didn't believe it.
Wow. So you were just tremendously excited about this thing happening.
Yes.
By mistake, even though he didn't quite believe it yet, you knew something was up.
Yes, we knew. I knew he had seen something incredible.
Wow.
I thought it was kind of stupid. But just a couple weeks later, a friend of ours by the name of Richardson came to the store. He's a local Ghostbuster. He does haunted Ventura tours. And he said, guys, the local cable company's hired me to do a show called Ghost Hunters, and I want you to be on it. And we'll do a show about angels. And we said, cool. He said, but I just ask you to do one thing. I want you to bring someone on this show that has had an angel experience in your store. Now, we debated about who we were going to bring on. She had a lot of ideas, but I felt the person that I wanted to put on was a lady by the name of Catherine Rosencrin. Now, Catherine, at the time, was the director of the Santa Paula Hospice. She's married to a medical doctor. She's a registered nurse. She's got 3 degrees in psychology. And she'd had several experiences in our store where like a vortex opened up in the back. And there were like 10 different people at 3 different times that had seen it, which kind of validates this.
And this is the angel store that I talked about, the opening.
Things from Heaven in Ventura.
Right, okay.
So we asked her, and she was glad to do it. We brought her, we did the show with her, and she was really excellent. And after the show, we took her out for dinner. And I said, Catherine, you're so great on that show. How did you ever have all these things happen to you? And she said, well, I didn't have much happen to me until I met my spirit guide. And Francesca's saying,
I said, you know what, kid has a spirit guide too.
So, great.
And he kicked me under the table, so I would just be quiet.
I said, what kind of spirit guide do you have, Catherine? Is it like Merlin or a shaman or something? She says, no, my spirit guide's really unusual. He looks kind of Chinese or something. He's kind of tall and thin. He's got a goatee, and he wears a long mustache and a ponytail. He wears a funny hat, and he's always wearing a kimono. He's always bowing to me. I said, what's your spirit guide's name, Catherine? She said, well, I couldn't communicate with him at first, but I went to a psychic, and he told me his name was Chung.
Wow.
And that's what I said.
I mean, did you like getting almost knocked back off the chair?
Yes.
I was laughing. I was just cracking up.
Did you have a sense that that's where she was leading to?
I did never expected that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Never expected that.
We didn't see it coming.
Wow.
But again, I wasn't totally convinced. I thought,
so this was a woman you really respected.
Oh,
and
yes.
when she told you that, then she went into the lunatic fringe category?
yes, I thought,
Really?
I
Yeah.
thought, well, this might just be a coincidence. I mean,
But that's a pretty big coincidence.
I know.
Okay.
But
go on, yeah, go ahead. So where'd you go from there?
about a year went by, and Francesca we got a load of new books for the store, and Francesca became obsessed with a book by James Van Praagh called Talking to Heaven. And I was working on the computer, and she came into the computer room, and she was crying.
Because I came to a part of the book, they said, becoming aware of my guides. And when I come to this page, he started talking about Chang and describing the same spirit that he have seen and Catherine have seen.
And this was James Van Praagh, who's the well-known
Psychic.
ghost
Yeah,
whisperer and
yes,
psychic.
that's
And he was saying in his book that he had the same spirit
the
guide.
same spirit
With the
guide.
same name.
And
With the
described
same-
them exactly the same with
the
this.
same
Wow.
way.
So that was another
But
coincidence.
by
Yeah.
then, I wasn't laughing. I was crying.
She was
Right.
crying.
I was
And how
crying.
did you take it? After she came
I
to
thought
cry.
it was really getting pretty weird.
Wow.
But nothing much happened with it until 2003. 2003 was a bad year for our store. Actually, 2002 was pretty bad with 9/11, and then the war with Iraq, and the war with Afghanistan, and then we're going into this war with Iraq, and we're threatening to go into the war with Iraq. We had the worst Christmas season we'd ever had. We
You
couldn't.
mean people were living in fear and not going to things from heaven, the angels store?
And besides,
They weren't
besides
shopping.
Yeah.
And our county was in a mini depression because what had happened is we have a lot of bases around our county, and a lot of the subcontractors of those bases were cut off because the money that came from the initial start of that war came from the bases. They pulled the money out of the bases to fight that war, so they cut off all the subcontractors. Our son even lost his job at it. And so thousands of people lost work. People were afraid to travel. We couldn't sell Andy Lakey art. We couldn't sell angels. We couldn't sell anything.
Wow.
And we had all of our creditors. You buy a lot of your stock 6 months in advance. We didn't see it coming. So the creditors are calling us. We can't make the payments. We're borrowing from credit cards. We borrowed them till the credit cards wouldn't even loan us money anymore. The bank wouldn't loan us any money. And we got to the point in 2003 where we needed to pay $5,000 by the end of March, or we were going to lose our space, and we were going to be closed down to the state of California. And we had $134 in the bank. Now, we decided we would have angel classes in the store. Maybe that would bring some people in. So we brought in a lady who was a licensed hypnotherapist, and we sat in on the classes, and the first night we did it, she decided to do an angel meditation where we'd meet our spirit guide. And I saw Chung for the second time.
Wow.
Since-
During this process.
and I hadn't seen him since 2001. This is 2 years later. I finally see Chung again. And he
Did you try during this period to do the John? So
No,
just
no.
nothing. Okay, go ahead.
I didn't. I thought, what would I use it for?
Right.
I thought it was amusing. I thought it was kind of cute. But I didn't really see there was any function to it. So we did the meditation, and I saw Chung for the second time, and he showed me something that I thought was kind of cruel. He said that I was going to find abundance. And I said, what are you going to give me, like abundance of cats or something? Let me explain something to you, Chung. I mean, the Iraqi war has started tonight. It started that night. He said, they've cut off the money from our bases. People are not traveling. People are not buying angels. And we only have 2 weeks to pay our bills. And we only have $134 in the bank. And he said, you were going to find abundance. And he showed me money. I said, abundance of money. I said, where's that going to come from? And he said, have faith.
Have faith.
And I didn't. But
No, faith isn't that easy to come by all the time, but yeah, no, I understand.
2 days
But
later.
that was all he said,
That's
have
all,
faith.
that's all he said.
About that.
And I mentioned this to the group, and they thought it was amusing. What did you think?
I believed it.
Oh,
I
she
knew
believed it.
I believed. I knew something was coming.
I didn't know where it was coming from. 2 days
Well, you
later,
didn't know where it was coming from either, but you knew it was coming from
We
somewhere.
knew, yeah, we knew it was coming because
2 days later, I got a call from Los Angeles International Airport. The voice on the line said, we're at LAX, can you tell us how to get to your store? I thought, well, at least somebody's coming to my store. I gave them directions. I know how to get to my store from LAX. And about 2 hours later, a young couple came in, and they were wearing kind of ragged blue jeans and the whole thing. And the guy says, thanks for the directions. They were really great. And I said, where are you guys flying from? He said, the island of Bermuda. I said, are you guys here on business? He said, no. I said, you're here on vacation? He said, no. I said, what are you here for? He said, we've come to see the art in your store by Andy Lakey. I said, Where did
Well, now you're talking. Let me
yeah.
come to the back.
I said, where did you hear about the art in Bermuda? He said, we'd never heard of it before. We were doing a meditation last week, and we saw his angel in the meditation. It looks like, show him the angel. Can you see it?
And his angels.
Oh, his
Move it,
usual
move it,
angel.
move
Yeah,
it.
he's
Yeah.
an angel,
Yeah.
and
Right.
this is what he saw in the meditation, the man
Right.
from Bermuda.
Yeah, hold it up for a little while. Maybe the camera could pick it up. It's awful little, but it's one of Andy's typical
Typical
angels.
angels,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So I led the couple to the back of the store, and they didn't look like they had much money. And I showed them some small paintings. I said, this one is $100, this one is $200. And he pointed to a big painting on the wall, and he said, how much is that painting over there? And I said, that painting is $5,000.
American. No,
Yes.
right.
And usually when I say that, people go, and they say, oh, that $200 painting looks pretty nice. But he just reached into his wallet and pulled out an American Express card and said, do you take American Express? Even if I didn't take it, I would say
Yeah,
yes.
I'd run next door.
Yeah.
Oh, baby, listen, I'm going to learn how to take this card.
He said, can you ship this painting to Bermuda? I said, yeah, I do it all the time. I'd never done it before. But we took the card, it ran, we shipped that painting to Bermuda, we paid off our state taxes, we paid the rent, but we were still in trouble because we couldn't pay even the nets for the merchandise we had in the store. And we didn't know where that was going to come from. But a week later, something really unusual happened. We were about to close on a Sunday night, and a car pulled across the street into a parking lot. And out of the car came two people wearing navy blue blazers. And as they got closer to the store, I noticed they were Japanese. And they walked right into our store. And the man came up to me and said, oh, I'm very embarrassed to ask you, but we were at a conference in Santa Barbara today. We got off the freeway by mistake, and the only place we could find a park was in front of your store. He said, can you tell us how to get back on the freeway going to Los Angeles? And I said, sure, and I told him how. I said, but you know, I don't believe in coincidences. I think you guys have been diverted to my store for some reason. He said, maybe so. I showed him the angels. I took him back, showed him the shrine, took him back into the art gallery, showed him the art, and I said, you know, I wrote a book about this art, and I showed him my book, Andy Lakey's Psychomantium, the book that Chung had shown me. And he said, oh, we like books. He said, if we buy your book, will you sign it for us? And I said, sure. And I signed the book for them. I thought they were just being polite, and they left, and I let it go. A few days went by, and I got a call from a lady who said her name was Nansuko. She said, I'm calling about your book, Andy Lakey's Psychomantium. I said, do you want to buy a copy of it? She said, no, I want to translate it into Japanese. I said, why do you want to do that? She said, last week, a Japanese couple came to your store. They were lost. You gave them directions. Do you remember that? I said, yes. She said, do you know who they were? I said, no. She said, they're the top translators of spiritual books in the country of Japan. They loved your book. They want to translate it into Japanese.
Wow.
Within 90 days, we had the best-selling spiritual book in the country of Japan. And we started getting orders for art. We started getting orders
Because
for
this
books.
book had art pictures in there,
Yes.
beautiful art pictures. So once it was translated, it was available, and they could see all
Yes.
the art.
And Andy Lakey and I went to Japan like 5 times. Francesca went with me to Japan. And we were like the heroes of Japan. We signed books. We sold art. We made money. We covered all the debts. We got totally out of debt. In fact, to show you how significant this Japanese connection is, 3 years later, this December, $1 in every 3 that came into our store came from Japan.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So how did this deal with your faith issues and your, doubting? How was this affecting all your experiences of this, new revelation in your life?
I thought it was kind of amazing. I was amazed. I was starting to believe. I wondered what else Chung had to tell me. I didn't know what he could do for me, though. And I told the story to the Japanese, and they were saying, well, but we want to hear an Andy Lakey story. But we became more and more obsessed with it. I decided I was going to write another book about Andy Lakey art and psychomantiums with the money that I got from this Japanese connection, and that we could book a trip to Greece so that we could do more research. We were going to study the Oracle of the Dead. But I found when we tried to do that, all the trips to Greece were at the wrong time of year for us, and they're too expensive, or they just didn't work out. We just couldn't make it that trip to Greece work. But when I clicked on one of the buttons, I saw this trip to Beijing.
And he yelled at, that was downstairs in my house, and he goes, Francesca, you're not gonna believe it, there is a trip to Beijing. The night before, I have had this dream of all these Chinese girls with this beautiful gown, all dancing. And I'm yelling, yes, you have to book it, we have to go. But not knowing why,
Right.
what was the reason for going there.
So we went to Beijing, and while we were there, we went to the Ming tombs, and Francesca became really excited because she found something at the Ming tombs.
It had a big sign that said Chang Tombs.
Wow.
And I went, my God, we found Chang, we have to go
Now,
to
in all this time, you hadn't gone on the internet and Googled and researched whether Chang was a
No,
big
nothing.
spiritual figure?
No,
Nothing.
We didn't know who he was.
You didn't know who he was?
We didn't know who he was at
No,
all. We just thought he was
nothing.
maybe some kind of ethereal being or something, looked kind of Asian or something. We didn't know.
We didn't know.
And it didn't really strike us to do any research on it.
Well, all right, you know what we'll do now? We'll do the second video, second half of the Andy Lakey video,
Okay,
and then we'll
cool.
come back and we'll have a new Andy Lakey piece, and we'll also have the rest of the story, an amazing story. So it's Andy Lakey's the second half of the video, Silhouettes and Shadows. So enjoy.
Shadows provide proof of our existence. The silhouette is the metadata of presence, the resultant change of incandescence that is referenced both by our interference and reception to the light. The shadow is a physical signature that identifies more than shape and mass. Dissolving and reconstructing in silent percolation, capturing something vital on paper, like a remote viewer put in contact with scant artifacts that sense deeper context and distant location. I look beyond the face to the luminal information in transition, and often something deeper, more surprising, more provocative emerges. Yet there is an unpredictability about this process. I often encounter disturbance, a white noise that yields little beyond the static surrounding a person. There are other times when I receive nothing at all. I am unschooled in the psychiatric arts and know little about metaphysics of any kind. What I do is bear witness, like a journalist faithfully transmitting the dialogue uncovered between the subject and his environment.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So that's a powerful video, isn't it? Yeah, Andy went through all these health issues with all the toxic paint. Had to paint for a while in a hazmat suit. Just amazing, what he did for creativity. So, and the picture you're seeing in between us now is another picture Andy did for the Bridging Art Project, Green Fang. So, just so much amazing stuff is happening now. So, Francesca, you were starting the story about being in Beijing and at the tomb. Why don't you tell a little more about that?
So we finally got to the Ming tombs, and it said Chang tombs, and I was so excited because we thought we found Chang. And I go and I tell Lee, our guide, can you please take us to see Chang to the tomb? And Lee kind of gave me this look like, this woman is crazy. And he goes, I'm sorry, but there's no one here buried with that name. What do you mean? It's a Chang tomb. Chang is buried here. No, it's a Chang. It's the title we give all the emperors. Wow. It means son of heaven. So I was really sad, but I told Keith, is that Chang? You have these big, big emperors, and with the big faces, round faces, and I go, and the statues, and I go, Keith, is that Chang? I say, Francesca, he's not a Ming emperor because he's tall and thin, but they don't have ponytails. All the emperors don't have, he's not a Ming emperor. So we left Beijing not knowing who he was. So we come back, and I told Keith, I said, okay, if it's not a Ming emperor, do you think it's a Qing emperor? And when we realized that the Qing emperors were Manchurians, and when the Ming dynasty, the last emperor, the Ming dynasty, they were having a peasant revolt, and they asked for help to the Manchurians in the north. So the Qings, the Manchurians came and helped, and they took over, and the last emperor of the Ming dynasty committed suicide. And that's why they started the Qing dynasty. And I have an almanac, and I told Keith, let's see, let's see who he was, if we can find him. So he goes in the computer and types the name. The first emperor is called Chunxi. And appeared this emperor who's kind of fat, and no, that's not him. And he comes the second emperor, and he has a K name, and I go, Keith, that's him. Because he's Keith and our two sons with K. This is a K, Emperor Kanxi. Some people say Kanxi. And he types, and there he is. Wow. So Keith goes, hi, Chang. So we found him. He's the second emperor of the Qing dynasty.
I'll tell you, between the Mings and the Wings and the Qings,
to
follow the story. It's like, thank God you knew what you were doing there.
I
was in the next county.
The Qing dynasty was the last Chinese dynasty that ended in 1911. So they went from the 1700s, or 1600s, from the 17th century to the 20th century. They lasted that long.
So how did this lead you to this butterfly lover thing? How did you guys go from this temple of the Qings and the Mings and boom?
We started getting, Chung, I started doing meditations regularly and talking to Chung. And he started referring to Francesca as his little butterfly. And she felt that maybe he was related to her. Was he? She thought that he was her father. And I asked him, and he said, yes, I was her father in the 17th century. And she was my little butterfly. Well, I thought that was kind of unique, but then something strange started happening. We started getting, let me go back a little bit, because at first we started checking on the word for butterfly. He said that her name meant butterfly in Chinese now, and her name was Francesca. So we started asking Chinese people that would come to the store how to say butterfly in Chinese. And the word was hutier. That doesn't sound like Francesca
Just
at all.
like Francesca, under the wing dynasty.
Yeah, didn't sound like it at all.
No.
And she became more and more depressed and sad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started receiving butterflies in every shipment we'd get from different companies for a store. We'd open it up and there'd be an unrequested butterfly, either a butterfly poster, a butterfly card, a butterfly something. And they were all these golden butterflies. They looked like swallowtails. And so finally, Francesca asked one of the Chinese people that came in what the butterfly in the poster was that was the swallowtail. And she said, hutier. And she said, no. What kind of butterfly is that? And he said, no. He said, oh, that's the Francier.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of validated what we were getting, and that she was the daughter of the Kongxi Emperor in the 17th century, but we still didn't know what this was all about. But we felt we needed to go back to China and find what that was all about. And so we booked another trip to China, and we had adventures there. I mean, we got hijacked by a Chinese cab driver, and the tires blew out in the car and everything else. We had all kinds of things happening. What was one of the most important things that you saw happen there?
When we got to the Qing tombs, finally, because he sent me, the first gift he sent me was this beautiful brooch of a golden butterfly, so I wanted to leave it in his tomb, also as a gift, because he sent me one, so I wanted to give him one. And when we got to the tombs, it was closed. We couldn't get in, and I was really, really sad. But they call it the offertory room. And they had all these chairs, and all the people that are buried in the tomb. And so I knew his chair because it's a golden dragon. It looks like a dragon. It's a golden chair, and I had it in my purse, but I didn't tell him. And they have it all surrounded with this sensor rope.
They had alarms in that
And
place.
alarms.
They had motion sensor alarms.
And I go under.
They
The
love that.
sensor
Americans going under.
under.
People are
It's
still in the
right.
gulag.
And he is terrified.
I'll bet.
And what are you doing? And I run and I go to the cushion and I push the butterfly, but the cushion fell down and I had to go back to
We
pick
set
it
up
up.
more electronic sensors.
So,
I mean,
and
did
by
all of a sudden the whole room start
all-
filling with...
Yes,
we
the guards
saw
were
the
up in
guards
This was kind of, okay, let me explain to you
coming.
where we were. We were at the Qing tombs. Now, this is not to be confused with the Ming tombs. See?
yeah.
Not to me.
No. The Ming tombs are like a tourist destination. Every tourist that goes to the Great Wall stops at the Ming tombs. The Qing tombs, nobody goes there. They are
But they still have that blocked off. I mean, it's still...
well, we were probably the only Americans that year that went to this. A lot of Chinese go there, but not many Americans go there. And it's 4 hours east of Beijing on bad roads.
So you got to want to go, really want to go.
There's no
And
tours
there's
there.
not that
No.
much reason for most people to actually
go.
be there, right?
So-
And you go breaking through the
But
lines.
So luckily, since this
Yeah.
place wasn't like the Terracotta Warriors or something, and the guards were all up in the front.
So
When all the alarms went off, they saw us. They saw
They
us.
saw they were coming. They were running, trying to see if we have done something.
What we'd done to how she defiled the sacred Kongxi dragon throne. So we headed back to the entrance to the tomb, and they had a big lock on it. And we stood there, and we waited. And there, I talked to Chung in the midst of all this, and he said, don't worry, they're not going to see you, it's okay. But I asked who was in the tomb. And he said that I was in the tomb, but she wasn't. That he'd married her to a prince from Mongolia. Now, I thought that was kind of funny. I thought, why would probably one of the most powerful people in the entire world in the 17th century marry his daughter to a prince from Mongolia, especially in a country like Manchurian China, which was very prejudiced? You could not, a Han Chinese could not marry a Manchurian. They felt that they were inferior. So I thought that was kind of dumb.
Well, he said he had traded me for peace. We didn't know what that was.
We didn't know what that was about. But when we returned from China, we did the research and found that the Kangxi Emperor had traded his daughter to a prince from Mongolia by the name of...
So you were getting all this information from this spirit guide,
Yes.
Chung, that was turning out to be historically accurate.
Yes,
that
yes.
You guys couldn't know in a million...
Nobody knows Chinese history.
No.
Nobody
one.
knows. So it's just all this information is coming out, and that's a lot of what's in the book. That's such a
Yes,
magical,
yes.
wondrous journey for you. But like, in terms of, we talk about like bridging, the show Healing the Heart, and we've talked a lot about that. What type of information has Chung given you about like this time in history, about the ways, to come back into that connection, into that love, into that oneness? Why don't you guys talk a little bit about that?
Let me start, then I'll let her finish. Okay, one of the things that helped us to discover who he was, that I didn't mention, was the fact that he was quoting kind of Christian things to us, and I thought, that's kind of funny that here, this emperor from the 17th century China would know things about Christianity. I did more research on him and found he was the only Christian emperor in the history of China.
Wow.
He and the entire court were baptized by the Jesuits. What had happened is he had come down with malaria, and they'd given him quinine. He was very impressed with the Jesuits' science. They taught him things that they weren't even teaching in Europe at the time. They taught him that the earth went around the sun. And in those days, they would burn you at the stake for saying that in Europe. So he was so impressed. He felt it was an important thing for his whole country to become Christian. So we had the entire court of the Manchurian court baptized Chinese, and decided he was going to have the entire country of China become a Christian country. So he sent envoys to the Vatican, and the Vatican turned him down. You know why they turned him down?
They didn't know the difference between the Wing and the Ming dynasty.
That was it. That was exactly the reason. No, they didn't like Confucianism, and they didn't like ancestor worship. And the Chinese couldn't get rid of those things, because Confucianism is kind of a social service examination. And
So in other words, the
And
Christians turned him down because he couldn't be solely, or the country couldn't be solely devoted to Christ and Christ's teachings, more or less?
And because they didn't like these two aspects, the ancestor worship part, which the Jesuits said was fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with loving your ancestors. And the other part, the Confucianism, which is more of a way to learn to be a politician. But it was in the midst of the Inquisition, and the Pope was concerned. They were having problems with the Native Americans in South America and North America and things like that. And they decided they had enough problems already with converts. They didn't want to bring in another big nation to convert. And so they turned him down. Wow. And after that, the Chinese dumped it all together. They eventually threw all of the Roman Catholics out of China.
Wow. So yeah, why don't you talk a little...
Well, his message now that he tells us to tell the world that love is the only truth, that fear is just an illusion, and that right now the only thing that we have to show everyone is peace and love as the only truth, and that's the only thing that we all want, and that all of us in heaven wants us to tell everyone here. And that's the mission of, you can see an awakening of everyone, of knowing they're finally waking up to know that we're all one, that religion is an illusion. Because in heaven,
Because it separates.
yeah, because in heaven, the only religion is love. And when we talk about love, it's what unites all of us to be one. And it doesn't, because religion separates all of us. And that's what causes all the wars and the pain and the fear. And a fear is an illusion, and the fear is the absence of love. And God is love. We all love, and that's what He wants us to tell everyone. And that's our mission of us and everyone that that He have chosen right now in this life. But He knew all of us in the 17th century.
And so are you coming to know that there are a lot more people who were given this particular information by Chung to go out at this time and spread that, love is the question, love is the answer?
Yes.
Yes.
We find that we have like a soul group. We think everybody has a soul group that kind of follows them around like a flock of birds throughout their lifetimes. And that our soul group is working with us, and probably there's other soul groups doing it as well, to bring love and peace to the world. It's interesting that the Kongxi Emperor in history, because of his actions, ended up bringing the longest period of peace and prosperity to China in the history of China. 150 years of peace and prosperity because of his leadership and because of the fact that he was able to eventually stop the Mongolians from going back and conquering China and Europe.
Wow.
Which they plan
And
to do.
Does he suggest any methods of meditation, prayer, any ways for humans who are in fear now to move out of fear, move into that experience of love?
He mainly says, love yourself, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. What else does he say?
Mm-hmm. Well, he tells us to tell to us and to everyone, you always have to talk with yourself. You cannot change anyone. You can only love yourself. And then, as soon as you love yourself, you also start doing this golden ripple and of showing everyone you love, and that love creates this wonderful union for
You're
everyone.
vibrating love, and that's the energy you're like love in motion, we
Yes.
talk a lot about.
Mm-hmm. And that's what, and he says, he says that all of us have a spirit guides. Each one of us have many, but most of us on earth don't know, and we don't ask for help, and they always want to help us, but we don't acknowledge them. So we have to start waking up and asking for help to all our guides, because they love us unconditionally, and they want us to do our best here when we're here. We're not perfect. We all know that, but that's okay, and he said that the good and the bad, they don't exist. It's just an illusion. Love is the only thing that is real. That's what he says. So hopefully, everyone will start seeing that love that we really need here on earth right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of disharmony. So, that's your experience too, that
Yes.
basically love is the way. We only have about 45 seconds left. In 30 seconds, what is love is the question, love is the answer?
We're all beings of light, and we know that as light, we cannot be darkness. People say, oh, what about the darkness? Well, there can't be darkness. What's the darkness? How can it be? Because everything's made out of light, there can't be any darkness.
Okay,
so
on
there
that
has to be
note,
love.
no darkness, all light, all love. If you want any information about Keith, Francesca, the store, the book, anything, they're open to, being available to spread the love. So it's Alan, 805-687-2053, 805-687-2053. Good night, we love you. Thanks for coming.